Well, thank you all so much for joining us today for the Reuters webinar on AI in insurance, how to make your operational goals a reality. I am Lisa Wardlaw, president and founder of 360 Digital Immersion. Honored to be moderating this very hot topic today. I'm kind of wondering how many webinars we can do in a 2-week period on generative AI and all things AI. But today holds a very special place in my heart, having formerly been a chief operating officer, how to take AI and really apply it to operations. And what does that mean? So without further ado, I would love for each of the panelists quickly to just say what company they are representing, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the background of the webinar, the content that we're going to cover, and yeah, looking forward to that. So maybe I have joining me today Ellie Hunt, Firas Ben Hassan, and Frederick Thurig, and I'd love for you all just to say hi to the audience and where you're representing today would be lovely. So maybe I'll start with you, Firas. You're in my top left.
Yes, sure. Many thanks, Lisa. So I want to express my gratitude to our wonderful host, Reuters Insurance, for bringing us today here. We are very much looking forward to the big show today to have, let's say, valuable insights about the topic of AI in insurance. So my name is Firas Ben Hassan. I'm Deputy Head of Data Science Services team in Allianz Technology. So my main role is to lead and manage a team of senior, junior, lead data scientists, engineers, where together we have implemented more than 20 AI applications deployed in productions for more than, let's say, 30 Allianz operating entities, such as Allianz Germany, Allianz France, Allianz UK, etc. One of the recent applications that we have worked on actively is Allianz GPT. I think all of you have heard about it, which is our generative AI tool that's kind of researcher, a time saver, and an inspirations for tens of thousands of colleagues on the daily basis. And I'm very much looking forward also to give more insights about it later on. So many thanks for our engaged audience, and I'm very much looking forward to the conversation going on. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next over to Ellie. Ellie, I'd love for you to say hi to the audience and introduce yourself.
Hello, hi. Yeah, I'm Ellie Hunt. I work at WTW in our insurance consulting and technology arm of the business. So I'm an associate director in the data science team, and we primarily work alongside pricing, product, claims and underwriting teams to introduce data science, machine learning, AI into various parts of the insurance operation. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Can't wait to have your insights along this journey today. And Frederick, last but not least, would love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm Frederick Turing. I work as a head of operational analytics in Tryg Insurance, which is the largest insurer in Scandinavia. And the term operational means that we are data scientists and mathematicians in my team, kind of developing and maintaining AI algorithms for the inner workings of the insurance company. And if you allow for a pretty broad definition of the term AI, but that is it. So basically, your claims, underwriting, HR, finance, IT, these kind of stuff, where we can develop and innovate in AI.
All the things. So let's kind of let's set the stage. I'm going to set the stage for just a minute, if you all will, bear with me, because you all are clearly experts in this. Let's bring everybody kind of along into our kind of topic and journey today, right? So clearly, I think, for everyone joining, you probably can't go a day without hearing, AI, generative AI, open AI, large language, LLM, natural language learning model, alphabet soup, right? And clearly, we as insurers have a duty to not just focus on the next thing, but how are we actually going to deploy and apply the next thing in a way that's reflective of our obligations, our regulatory frameworks, our consumer experience desires. How do we continue to innovate and transform our industry? So, as if that weren't enough, we have to balance all that against economic headwinds, what's going on in our reality with risk, with resiliency. How do we all make this work? Which, as you can imagine, is no small feat. We can't just say, just take this and do this with it. We have to become strategists. We have to become very intentional with our design, but yet we can't sit on the sidelines and just wait. So the goal of the discussion and dialogue today will be to leverage the expertise of Firas, Ellie, and Frederick to navigate us through some of these questions that are top of mind for many insurers and many people trying to figure this out today. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention for what's top of mind to you as well, which is why we have the Q&A functionality. So as you're hearing one of the panelists discuss or give an idea, you can feel free to immediately put your question in the chat function. I will be moderating and navigating through that, so I might not interrupt them, but I'll make sure that I group questions and themes together, and we'll try to get to absolutely as many questions as we can during the remaining 55 minutes that we have today. And then I would love to just say, for those of you with the ability to join us for Future of Insurance Europe, we will be joining Reuters, which is hosting that in Amsterdam, November 28th and 29th. And so without further ado, let's get into some of the key questions. And so what I'd love to do is ask this question and have all three of you answer it. Oh, sorry, before we do that, let's step back. Let's actually, Firas, I'd love to get your reaction to the key themes that we're going to be covering today. How do you think about that from the point of your role and work in industry, and specifically with what you're developing with Allianz? So first, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. Before deep dive into what we currently in Allianz are developing in terms of AI portfolios, let's maybe describe the insurance industry value proposition into two infinitive verbs. We can only agree on those two verbs. Our main value proposition in any insurance corporate or any insurance company is to detect and to repair. And artificial intelligence currently is shifting this main value proposition from to detect and to repair into to predict, to recommend, and to prevent. So this is what we can, for example, currently AI is strategically applied in the insurance industry to benefit business operations and enhance customer, for example, experience. From risk assessment and underwriting, for example, when we use AI algorithms to analyze vast amount of data from various, for example, data sources to assess risk more accurately, automate underwriting process. Also from the claims management, when we automate now, let's say the claims processing, so we don't need to send it to the clerk or to the claim handlers to analyze it, but just AI will score each claim based on all the structured data about the claim, about the contract, about all the persons involved, scan all the documents, apply image recognition, natural language processing to extract information from those claims, from those documents, images, in order to make a quick decision into, for example, are we going to reimburse quickly this claim, or are we to wait and send it to the, for example, human intelligence to, for example, have a look. Also from the customer service, when we, for example, we try to implement a lot of, or we are currently implementing AI-powered chatbot, which aims to assist and to have kind of virtual assistant to our customers and to have kind of to answer all the frequent asked questions. And now with the hype of large language model, we add kind of personalizations into some questions, and we have increased, let's say, this interaction between our virtual agent and the customers. Of course, fraud detection, when it's one of the, let's say, the station when AI is introducing a lot of change, for example, in addition to the human intelligence, we applying the business rules, we have kind of predictive models that can detect the fraudulent activities in real time, reducing insurance fraud, and, for example, analyze the text data, see if, for example, there is kind of suspicious keywords, if there is kind of same description has been used in fraudulent text attached to previous text. So the telematics data, the IoT, for example, to understand the behavior of the drivers, to design, let's say, the convenient policy statement, automation, routine task. Also now with Allianz GPT, for example, in Allianz, which is kind of internal tool where we facilitate the onboarding of new colleagues when we, for example, simplify the knowledge sharing and the documentation as well into one data source instead of having like a lot of PDFs and a lot of PPT, etc. So yeah, in 2 words, to do not, for example, show all the capabilities. Incorporating AI strategically in the insurance industry can lead to cost savings, improved risk management, faster claims processing, enhanced customer experience. It's very crucial for insurance companies, for example, like Allianz, to invest in AI technologies. And it's one of the, let's say, our value propositions to adopt our business models to remain competitive in rapidly evolving industry like insurance industry.
Yes, so Firas, one of the things that I just like hear when you're talking is not only the art of the possible, and also the like very tangible nature of how you're thinking of this and applying it. But what kind of the overlying theme I hear is like, wow, that's a lot. That's not an inconsequential span of control in terms of where we're thinking generative AI is affecting operations. So when I hear that, I think, yes. And then I think, how are you doing that? Like, how are you thinking about this holistic 360 lens of this? You would just love to kind of banter that back with you, because that, it's I actually love the fact that you were so inclusive of all of the things that you mentioned, right? But that's probably might be intimidating for some people. That's not just one thing. You weren't just saying we're going to help you analyze your policies, right? So how is that very intentional? Are you leading that at Allianz? And is that something that you think other people might struggle with, which is just like, it can be a little intimidating?
So, I mean, for sure, let's say the adoption of artificial intelligence, I think speaking about a couple of years ago, Lisa, so not like recently, but let's say the paradigm of adoption of AI has been completely changed, because before people are more, let's say, defensive for human intelligence more than AI. Okay, so we have this kind of score from artificial intelligence predictive model, for example, to say that this claim is suspicious or not suspicious, or for this kind of policyholder, we need to, for example, assign this kind of pricing model. So a lot of people, they try to, before to, let's say, be defensive and be against, for example, the adoption of AI. But currently, when we show a lot of use cases, POCs, POV, MVP, and show, let's say, the potentials in terms of cost savings. I mean, for example, in Allianz, for example, we are saving more than, let's say, hundreds of millions every year thanks to our AI models. For example, in the front context, the same, for example, for improving let's say the risk management, the customer experience. We are for sure super happy with, for example, the NPS scores that we are receiving from the customers, the customer retentions. So for sure, AI make this kind of our business models more competitive. And now everyone within the insurance industry is doing AI. And also now the question is, in the future, and especially if we are speaking about customer retention, who is going to pay first? For example, either AXA or Allianz or Generali. So that's, let's say, kind of catalyzers to invest more in AI and adopt more and more artificial intelligence. So this is not a choice, but this is kind of must that any kind of insurance industry, corporate or company needs to have in their strategy agenda.
Frederick?
Yeah, Lisa, can I just add to what Firas is saying? I totally agree, and I think you mentioned a lot of nice use cases and if you look at those from a more overview perspective, you'd say that this is the real USP of artificial intelligence, to just screen massive amounts of data with a certain algorithm which you have either trained or in some way got hand of, to actually, as you mentioned yourself, to basically divide your flow into two categories. This should be a straight through process, no questions asked, just pay out, and this should be manually handled. And that's the absolute best way to do this, to use these tools.
Yeah.
Someone just could, because we won't have people screening all those data in that pace all the time. but an AI can do that, and it can just highlight cases where people should engage to a higher degree. That's,
I love
yeah,
that.
totally agree.
So Ellie, would love to hear your thoughts, from a slightly different perspective, which is helping clients think through like this. How are you approaching that in your role at Willis Towers Watson? And how do you think of these key themes, these kind of core themes that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my primary background is in pricing, so that's kind of where my focus generally lies. Although I have been involved in claims projects, so in terms of operationalizing that sort of fraud detection, etc. That is key on our agenda as well. But from a sort of a pricing perspective, particularly within the UK, what we're seeing is an ever increasing sophistication of techniques that are being used. So I think of pricing has always been incredibly data heavy, incredibly model driven. And we move sort of from, our traditional GLMs, and we're moving up through, up through different techniques, up to sort of machine learning, and then looking forward into the future, what does generative AI mean in this space? So the current state of play in the UK is most large insurers are using machine learning in their pricing, in their real-time pricing models. They're using, GBMs or elastic nets, whatever it may be, in their sort of like either risk models or their customer behavior models that then feed into their further optimizations. We're seeing an increasing amount of using data science and AI to sort of automate insight generation, and that then feeds into business decision making. So how do I update my underwriting rules? How do I know which segments I really don't want to write anymore? That's all becoming increasingly automated, and like automated flagging is popping up. And we have things like automated model monitoring, which is making like monitoring of all of the models that we now have. We have so many models that we have to maintain. Is making the maintenance of that a lot easier. We're just getting alerts when models have degraded past a certain point, and we can just take take the human who needs to go and make the changes to that model, and they can go ahead and make those changes. So it's much more efficient in terms of time usage. So now we're kind of looking forward into the future. What does generative AI mean for our sort of sector? And it's looking really exciting. Again, it's somewhat unknown still. We're very much experimenting in this area. I mean, we've got some like smaller use cases at the moment that I'm allowed to talk about that are around sort of actually data sort of creation. So in the commercial line space, where you have lots of really rich information that comes in like PDFs, PowerPoints, whatever that may be. How do we extract that information into something that we can use our, advanced techniques on? And we're starting to use generative AI to sort of feed that process, and that's really exciting. But I think all of this is it's sort of tinged with risk, right? And we really need to be sort of looking out for where those risks are going to pop into the process, and be looking to sort of mitigate those going forward.
So the one thing that I definitely hear reflected when you're talking is, I when I used to run data, and the data science team had like a dotted line into me, and we used to always say, gosh, we've got so much data, but it was like generically almost suffocating. And I was smiling because I was thinking of, because I grew up on the CFO side before I went into the innovation side, but I was thinking about just the nightmare of combining my pricing assumptions, my pricing models, my valuation assumption, and not to mention IFRS 17 and how all those things together, and and yes, I had, somebody made a typo in one of the inputs and assumptions, and it was like something like 0.003 instead of 0.03, and just all these things that like just get buried in just piles and piles and piles of spreadsheet risk, right? So we've always had risk and we've always had data, but the ability to kind of parse that out in such a rapid way now. And Ellie, like when I hear you give some of this, and I definitely want to get into the questions, but like it's so refreshing to think, can we leverage this to kind of be less risky and more detective than our human eyes were? Because it was just, again, it was just so buried in tab after tab after tab, and input cell after input cell after input cell. And for any of you who are our pricing actuaries, you know what we're talking about.
So there are techniques now around sort of anomaly detection, which really have, that really improve that, the burying of the data. It can be used to really surface those issues and those errors, either from a human error, I've inputted these data fields wrong, or from this is a weird data point that I really want to go and investigate, and I really want to dig into why that supplier is doing that thing. Why is it so much more expensive, or whatever that data point may be. So yeah, lots of exciting things going on.
So Frederick, we're going to turn it over to you. You can respond to that and give us your lens on these key themes as well. I mean, it's so exciting.
I mean, this might be a tangent, but just because we have Ellie here as a pricing expert, I have a question. I have a question for you, Ellie, which basically is, because to my mind, insurance pricing has always been viewed as an actuarial problem and not a machine learning or AI problem. And to my mind, that has kind of made it to kind of be left behind, where because we might have more advanced models in other parts of the business than in pricing. So my question is to you, Ellie, do you agree, and do you have an explanation to that?
Yeah, I definitely have a view. I would say that it's very, very linked to class of business. So within the personal line space, which is primarily where I work, we're getting increasingly model driven. In the UK, the majority of larger insurers are using at least GLMs being the sort of very basic, but with the majority of insurers are using GBMs as either their risk models, or the behavioral models that sit and feed into a further optimization. If you kind of move along into sort of the commercial lines space, the amount of data, the quality of the data reduces. It becomes increasingly difficult to apply these techniques in that space. And then as you kind of move, towards the London market, it gets even harder still. So yeah, I think that the usage of machine learning models in sort of personal lines is really taken off, and I don't see that, especially with the advent of aggregators as well, where we can collect aggregator data very easily. And yeah, that's basically opened up the world of machine learning for insurance pricing. Yeah.
Thanks.
So Frederick, do you want to give us your thoughts on these key themes? And I'm going to move into some of my questions.
Well, I mean, yeah, the themes on how to operationalize AI in the business. Yeah, I think you should remember there's more. I mean, it's a techie subject, but there's more than tech to it. So you need and especially if I can start from this end, especially if you are in a large corporations. I mean, as Firas is also in large corporations, you will have multiple AI and analytics team doing some machine learning, doing some AI for various parts of the business, and that is fine, of course. But I think you just need to reckon that there might be surfaces where we should benefit the business from having a common view, and those could be compliance, your data governance, your attracting talent, your developing, productionizing your algorithms. So I think I would like to stress the importance of having platforms for those that kind of should hinder that those things are innovated in for different parts of the business in roughly the same way. That's kind of what we have seen on our end when operationalizing AI.
Yeah. Which, if I think about it, Frederick, like, so it's funny because I think I've been talking about applied AI for at least the last 8 to 10 years. Like, it was, on one hand, it was the possibility, but on the other hand, it was, how do we apply it? And, of course, I've been around for a while, so it's like, and that we're just seeing the next wave of that. But let's take that one. How can AI be strategically applied in the insurance industry to benefit business operations and enhance customer experience? And I'd love to hear from each of you. Maybe for us, I'll start with you first.
Yes, so for sure, artificial intelligence have big advantages, not only, for example, for our customers, let's say, not speaking about the end customers, but for example, the operating entities, for example, of Allianz, and also for the internal, let's say, colleagues first. So for example, our internal workforce, for example, if we can simplify certain complex, let's say, processes, for example, creating, let's say, incident ticket, having kind of immediate resolution of the ticket. Same, for example, for cybersecurity. Same, for example, for internal or documentations on onboarding, for example, new joiners within, let's say, the company. This is something that is very important, of course, to increase, let's say, the employee satisfaction first. Going to, for example, next level to the customer. Yes, let's say, for example, in this technology, when we are serving and we are operating artificial intelligence for many Allianz operating entities, for sure, it has a lot of beneficial when, once again, the customer can see, let's say, the big impact of artificial intelligence in order to join forces with the human intelligence, because also it's something that we need to keep in mind. Artificial intelligence is not going to replace human intelligence. Artificial intelligence cannot be created and will not be maintained without, for example, human intelligence in all aspects. Same, for example, for fraud detection, since, let's say, our portfolio main focus on fraud fighting. So, for example, when we have fraud experts and the claim handlers, those kind of jobs will not disappear. They will actually be more and more involved because they will monitor the predictive model, for example, performance, and see and correct any kind of deviations, and also, for example, train more data for us in order to have more and more accurate models. Like same, for example, for large language models, when we use more and more, let's say, content. And in terms of customer satisfaction too, also with let's say, the chatbot applications, because before, I think, Frederick, you mentioned before in our catch-up this example of chatbot kind of boring, but I will keep, let's say, the stage for you to more present this funny, let's say, use case, which I completely agree with you. Yes, sometimes when I check, for example, different chatbots, not only for insurance, but in any kind of use case, it's kind of boring. Yes, okay, it's stopping, for example, in terms of authentication or answering frequent questions. But now with the hype of large language model, now the chatbot will kind of have a revolution in order to have kind of a personalized and customized and understanding really the need of the customer. That's also really going to improve a lot in the couple of let's say, days, weeks, and months. Of course, it takes time, but this is a very, very let's say, important factor behind changing the main propositions of the chatbot and the conversational AI via adding more customization, more personalizations. This also sarcasm, this kind of sentiment, for example, sharing is something that for sure will help a lot to increase the level of customer satisfaction.
Yeah, I love that. I'll wait to go in. I'll click in on that chatbot example in a little bit. But Frederick, I think you were coming on to kind of give a response to this, like, actually the benefiting of business operations, which is what you focus on.
Yeah, and I sat there thinking about strategy as Firas was mentioning, and I think, I mean, if you remember the term culture eats strategy for breakfast, you might think that we're entering an era here where, I mean, we're doing AI to some extent, and we will do AI to an even more extent in 5 years, and even more in 10 years. So I think it's important to remember that in your strategy, and also work with the actual culture of innovation with AI, because there are a lot of brilliant ideas out there in the organization. People started thinking about, okay, this is an LLM. I mean, this is a chatbot. How can we apply that in that area or that area? And if you can foster that kind of culture in your organization, now I kind of drifted over from strategy to culture, because I think there is, I mean, that is where the real benefit is.
I think it's so important that you mentioned that, Frederick, and you know, I'd love to know if the audience is seeing this too, but like a lot of companies are saying things like, you know, how do we get our hand around this? Like, so the strategy part, how do we think about this? How do we not put, you know, our proprietary IP, et cetera, out in an open forum? So like yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said that, I think it was like their marketing materials or whatever, and, you know, on their corporate issued devices, people can't use Chat GPT because then the IP would be whatever, perhaps unveiled. And I'm like, so you think they're not going to go to their phone? And I'm not saying like upload rate tables and pricing models, but, and so to your point about culture, I think the other thing to emphasize here is the democratization and usability of AI is, that genie's out of the bottle and it's not going back in. And so to kind of to your point about, we always say like culture eats strategy, for sure. And the fact that this is common and available to everyone, you do not have to be a citizen developer anymore. You just have a phone or a computer. So I think that we have to take this new culture of democratization into account as well, Frederick, which I really like. And Ellie, I'd love to know kind of like your thought, if we kind of swing that panel around to like, you know, how is it really benefiting business operations, and what are you seeing? You gave some great examples in your overview.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're starting to sort of scratch the surface on where LLMs are going to be used in the sort of in the operation. I think we have seen some really interesting examples. We've been able to deploy large language models into an analytical workflow to look at claim handlers text to understand, you know, why sorry, not claim handlers, call handlers text to understand why lapses are happening, and it's given us much better results than just looking at things like keywords, which was quite a common technique before, you know, before these were available. So I think that yeah, you're very right that the sort of democratization is coming, and this kind of speaks again to the sort of risk strategy for each company. Again, a lot of companies have just outright blocked using, you know, Chat GPT on the network. Right. We don't want to put our intellectual property on here. We don't know what's going to happen to it. We don't know like what the results of those Chat GPT prompts is going to be. Like, is it going to have hallucinated? And we don't know if the actual like results are valid, even if they look really credible. That's a really concerning angle to it as well. So yeah, there's lots going on and lots to be looking at.
And I'm there's so many levels at which this is so familiar, right? It's like the blocking, and the security team used to report to me in one of my former roles. So like, yes, we used to block everything. And then there is this, you know, and of course, back in those days, right? Like you can't send the file to your personal email to use it, you know, like all these protocols. But the absurdity of it is like, I can basically ask, and I won't say the name out loud because she'll start responding to me, but one of my voice operated devices, blah, 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 can you go tell me this? And so there is this, it's almost like using a thesaurus now, right? Or a resource, if we think about it like that. And, our children are using these resources now as commonly as we use something like the dictionary. Like my daughter WhatsApped me this morning. She was working on something in school and she's like, I need to make my bio a little better. And of course she's like using this, right? So it's like the leverageability of these tools. But if we bring all that back, I think the theme that the three of you are really talking about is like beyond the tech. So like on one hand, it's like the tech and how do we deploy the tech and what are the like IT considerations, security, privacy, compliance, all those. But let's get like down into the componentization of this. And I loved one of the frameworks that, because I clearly got to talk to you all before this session that we were talking about, which is, it's so much. Like we've got HR, we've got elevating our people, talent management, and of course my favorite framework that you all brought up was this AI internal operating model, or this like target operating model for AI. And I'd love to know how you all are thinking about that, and how, if our audience has questions about that, because I think when we did digital before, it was an automation vertical, a process engineering vertical, or whatever. Now this is clearly widespread and affects a lot. And how do we create an AI internal operating model that supports us both internally and as well as how we partner with our vendors? So would love to hear from all three of you on that, and happy to, whoever wants to go first, let's do it.
Yeah, sure. I can go first. So first of all, for example, I think there's also one of the questions I have seen in the QA chat now is about, let's say, the crucial elements to adopt AI successfully in any corporate or in any company. So first of all, in my opinion, is the access to the right data. And I think this also mentioned by, let's say, Frederick and Eddie. So make no mistake, that means that good data fuels good artificial intelligence. Trained on the right data, machine learning algorithms can do kind of amazing things, such as how to see, for example, computer vision, or how to read, natural language processing, how to speak, natural language generation, walk, for example, autonomous robots, etc. So this is very important, especially to access to more data ever before. And I think we are lucky now that we have a lot of data, both internal and external. That data often is not, for example, big issue or big mistake, or sorry, big issue or big problem for any kind of company, because maybe the main problem could be, for example, the integrations of different data sources. For example, I can take a real and concrete example with an alliance. So, for example, each OE and each country has its own kind of system or claims management system or policy, for example, system. So how we can do this kind of harmonization, and how we can have kind of standardized and harmonized data source. So this is, let's say, one of the key points in order to implement artificial intelligence successfully within any kind of company. Second point is the access to the right talent and let's say skills. I think AI skills are in a huge demand, and companies are competing for the top talent. So here the solution is more to develop kind of skills and data literacy strategy to attract and to retain, for example, the existing, let's say, skills. And also, for example, nowadays we have a new title of jobs that are more and more adopting AI. For example, in the context of large language model, and for example, for our Allianz GPT, we are now thinking about hiring new titles called prompt and knowledge engineers that, for example, wasn't exist a couple of months ago. So yes, a lot of new positions are now under creation thanks to AI. And of course, let's say kind of old titles and positions, they should be reskill again in order to adopt AI. Third crucial element, in my opinion, is the right technology. And here we are kind of lucky, for example, that we have quite a fruitful ecosystem. Since, for example, in Allianz, we are collaborating with many, let's say, providers, insurtech companies, for example, when we collaborate together to explore and to have the right technology and also the right capabilities. Same, for example, for training large language model, when we need kind of a super powerful computing capabilities in order to train and to ingest real-time data from different streams and different sources. The fourth point, I think also you mentioned, Lisa, is the ethical and the governance framework. like any technology, for example, AI can do amazing, let's say, things, but if we misused, can have negative outcomes. And biased and let's say intrusive AI are one of the such example. And it's really our kind of, let's say, duty in order to manage the ethical and the governance framework to ensure that our AI models are fair, not discriminative, and explainable to, for example, no IT people background. And it's also a very important element for democratizing AI. Of course, when we are providing, for example, a score, or when we say that this claim is suspicious, we need to translate the AI logic into easy to use, for example, and let's say explainability for the non-IT background. Also, this is a big question behind the large language models, and especially now OpenAI and ChatGPT. So we don't know which kind of data sources, what kind of, for example, let's say the content that have been used within AI, within, for example, the training of large language models. And this is something that we need to ensure that we are not using kind of let's say, kind of discriminative content and unfair content, etc., to generate kind of biased answers. I think also, let's say, the sixth element, I can summarize some aspects, is more the right organizational culture within any organization, from different factors. First, from the management, of course, within, let's say, establishing the strategy of the company, AI should be kind of prioritization. Second is also the internal workforce, how they are able to, for example, accept successful artificial intelligence adoption, and also the customer. So this is for sure something that we need to work on it. And there is a big progress, has to start from the top with a good leadership and open conversations to, let's say, to dispel fears and misunderstanding about AI and the capabilities of the artificial intelligence. And yeah, for sure. And for example, mainly thanks to kind of efficient, let's say, artificial intelligence strategy and data strategy than any mistake.
So Frederick, I saw your hand up. Let's see
Yeah,
your lens on this.
I totally agree with you, Faraz. And then as you see here, that there's a lot of departments, a lot of people that needs to be engaged, basically around these mathematics team or AI teams. You simply can't have a team and say, well, here's the ChatGPT API. Go ahead.
Let it go.
Let it go.
Rock on.
There's a whole environment of, and I mean, as you've mentioned as well, Firas, the organizational challenges. I mean, you can have this all centrally, you can have it all this decentrally, but still there are these departments that you need to have on board in your AI journey. You have your, as you mentioned, IT, HR, strategy. I will say communication, because that would link into all the culture to kind of, well, have your internal communication team enlighten and kind of lift up. These are the use cases what we're working with. These are the use cases we have delivered, and kind of foster that kind of, well, give us some new use cases. What do you think out there that I'm not saying that every person in the organization needs to learn Python.
Absolutely.
No. So, but they need to kind of start thinking about what could be possible with this new technique, and start engaging with the tech people around that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. I think this is actually the next, maybe let's say, small comment on that, Frederick. So that's, let's say, the key message that any insurance organizations need to adopt, is to bring people along the journey, including AI champions, for example, who can span the world of business, of, for example, technology, and help engage with business users. And techie, for example, like, can be extremely useful, especially for people who don't know any idea about what does it mean prompt engineering, what does it mean Python. So having understanding of data science and AI with easy to use vocabulary will also help promote data governance and ensure data is treated as kind of vital business asset. Because when you go tomorrow to your claim handler or to agent who is receiving the claim, and you show him that, for example, having poor data quality or neglecting some features collection, for example, about, for example, the car model or about the property address, can have a big influence into, for example, future decisions. For sure, this will increase the awareness of the importance of gaining more data in, let's say, sufficient and accurate way. So if everyone in the business understand the need for good quality data, then that is actually is going to be a big step towards better data and therefore better.
So let's kind of connect all this. So clearly, I think the AI operating model is like the next frontier that organizations need to deal with overtly and intentionally, not just make it like a data science. Because again, remember, up till now, no offense, data scientists, it was kind of this like R&D thing that data scientists were working on, and they were figuring out how to employ and activate models, and then we were kind of comparing like rules engines to machine learning model 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we were simply putting BI around it and kind of figuring out like, okay, like which one would win, right? Now, like Ellie, I think this is even fascinating because we've got the AI operating model, so your internal operating model, but in particular, your operating model and how you engage with vendors. So the sophistication, there's a couple of questions about buying vendors and leveraging vendors, but like, it's interesting to me because startups may or may not have, depending on who they are, the sophistication of the AI operating model and all the dimensionality that would be needed. So how are, companies thinking about engaging with vendors, Ellie, like Willis or others? And are they asking you about your AI operating model yet? And how are you all kind of, if you will, elevating that to your customers and saying, you don't just need to think about the output, but you also need to think about the depth of resources that we have to assemble in order to do this. And Firas and Frederick, you mentioned all these like new roles and additional people that you're doing, like prompt engineering, et cetera. So Ellie, love to hear from you on the vendor side of that.
Yeah, so from a sort of software perspective, we're seeing an increasing number of insurers coming to us in a state of concern. They don't know whether the right approach is to sort of build their own technology or whether to buy something from a third party vendor, right? And that's a really big risk, right? I think there's a big risk with sort of making the wrong decision there. So we kind of see the big players maybe can afford to build their own systems, build their own teams, and everything that goes around having like AI powered decision making. They do have the resources to be able to accomplish that. And I think the case in point is that Firas is here talking about Allianz. On the other side of the scale, the risk is that the smaller guys try and build their own solutions and realize that the cost is actually a lot higher than what they originally anticipated, and that they get into a real situation where they didn't realize how much maintenance and support was needed. They didn't realize how the key man dependency. You've got one guy who knows exactly how all of this ties together, and he's the one or she's the one that can fix the problem on Christmas Day, as we're all opening our Christmas presents, or do you know what I mean? So there's so the technology side is kind of the heart of the problem, and then you build the rest of your operating model around that. So whether that's having an AI, I mean, the classic sort of operating model would be like the hub and the spokes, right? So do you have a team of AI engineers as a hub, and then they kind of work as a central hub with individual teams, or do you actually implement AI specialists into each individual team and then have some sort of way of connecting those people? So it's kind of a bit of a chicken and egg. And I think once you have your view on what technology and what solutions you're going to be using, then you can kind of start to build the rest of the people side of things around that.
For sure. And never before has the concept of the spiderweb approach to capabilities been more reflective to me than the era that we're in with this, just, I always think of that, like, it's not just one capability. You've got to have this flywheel of capabilities that's kind of almost, like Frederick, you keep explaining, it's not just sitting over here in one side. It's the net is cast very wide, very meshed across the entire organization, including your vendors, including your suppliers, and including your partners. So let's move on to, like, I'll call it lessons learned. And I've been around long enough to have done some of these myself. So I'll sit here and raise my hand and say, when we first went digital. So let's kind of like draw from some of our experiences with digital. And I'm thinking chatbots. So for us, you alluded to this earlier. We went digital, and, for me personally, it was kind of like insultingly intelligent. Like, most of us, when we interacted with a chatbot, were like, representative, exit, operator, help, the hashtag, get me out of here. So what can we draw from this and apply these insights now to this AI framework? Like, how can we learn? Because I think what we've heard, the robustness of this discussion, is how deep, how leverageable this is. Clearly, we need the right team. We need the right operating frameworks. We need the right models. And I don't mean large language models. I mean, we need the right business models to support this. But how can we make sure it doesn't become an opt-out or insultingly intelligent solution in our organizations and things that we're trying to deploy it to? So to me, that covers both the lessons learned and a little bit of use cases. And maybe Frederick, I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure.
So you want to start for us?
Sorry, Frederick. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I think I'll. This is a complicated one. I mean, because the question is, Lisa, how do we make this happen? How do we make this perfect, basically? And I don't know the question. I don't know the
answer. Or at
least
not so that I'm not screaming operator.
No, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the first generation of chatbots, everybody had them, nobody loved them. I mean, that was the truth. And the next generation with the LLM technique is so much better. But there's some cons with that as well, because I mean, if you really want them to be able to answer the question specifically from your company, you need to train that with your company data, and that might introduce some governance or data compliance problems, as well as you are kind of there's a lot of companies in the past launching these kind of bots where the bot went a bit crazy, and you don't want that.
Ellie, hallucination.
Yeah, hallucination. Yeah, that's a better word, perhaps.
That's my favorite Ellie term so far.
you don't want that in your customer company correspondence, do you? So that could be bad in so many ways. Now I'm just reiterating the problem I see. So for us, you might have a solution to this one.
Ellie, do you or Faraz have any thoughts on this? I mean,
please go ahead, Faraz.
I mean, so the question is more about, for example, drawing from the experience in digital transformation, right? So, I mean, particularly in the context of chatbots or any other AI-driven technologies, there's like kind of valuable insights that can be applied to create more integrated AI frameworks that for the evolving future. For example, first we need to have kind of focus or have kind of approach which is customer-centric. So more focusing on improving the customer experience. As, for example, Frederick mentioned, how we can make chat annoying, not boring. So how he can provide more quick, personalized, and convenient service in real time and user-friendly. Second point, I think, is more about having kind of data-driven decision-making. How we can ensure that, or how we can harness the power of data, analytics, and artificial intelligence in order to make more informed decisions in underwriting, claim processing, customer services, and how we can, for example, continuously collect and analyze customer feedback, how we can digitalize our legacy tools in order to improve the data quality. The same also, for example, for the scalability and the flexibility. It's more about building AI system that can be scalable to handle increased demand and adaptable to evolve customer needs. Human and artificial intelligence collaborations, something that should be the main and the core point here to consider, is to more promote collaborative environment where AI augments the human capabilities rather than replacing them. Once again, AI will not replace human. There will be always kind of collaboration. There's kind of joint forces between human and artificial intelligence. Another point is the ethical considerations. For sure, we need to prioritize the ethics and the transparency in artificial intelligence implementations. And this is something that we need to increase the awareness of it for the data science team and the AI champions within any organizations to prioritize assessing the AI models. When you are building large language model or when you are building your predictive model for fraud fighting, okay, please prioritize the assessment to see if your model is kind of unfair or, for example, discriminative, and see how we can, for example, mitigate this. I see also questions about, for example, Allianz X and, for example, the venture capital that Allianz currently is doing. It's very important. It's very important to focus on the partnership and the ecosystems.
Yeah.
It's very important, especially for big corporate like Allianz, to collaborate with technology partners, to ensure tech startups, data providers. This for sure able us to access to cutting edge AI capabilities and innovation. This is very important to leverage ecosystem partnership to enhance innovation and market reach. It's more about not competing, let's say, in unfair way, but it's more about, for example, providing kind of ecosystem of innovation and exchange between, let's say, different.
Not to mention it's sustainable. We have to share some things, right? Like, even though we are a proprietary industry and we're focused on our secret sauce,
yes,
it's not sustainable. And Ellie alluded to this as well, that all companies can independently build all things, which was insurance of the past. And so we all need to acknowledge our history. We're very all or nothing built. We weren't really a rent, lease, buy kind of institution and organizational framework. We were like it's our competitive advantage. Nobody can see it. It's our secret sauce. But I think we all acknowledge with the tools and technologies out there, which is why the partnership model and the internal AI operating model are so important. It can't always be a go it alone. Even when you have the power and strength to go it alone, you still have to have an ecosystem partnership model. So I just wanted to weigh in on that for us a little bit.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, totally
okay.
Agree. And just the last point, if you allow me, Lisa, is more about long-term vision that every organization needs to have, is to have clear and adaptable kind of long-term strategy and vision for AI in insurance, considering, for example, the future trends and technologies and potential the potential governance conversions and migration into emerging technologies like, for example, now blockchain, Internet of Things with telematics, and also now with generative AI. So we should, of course, have kind of long-term vision. Yeah.
So let's take in. Sorry, I think we could take any one of these questions and probably do an entire 1 hour webinar, which is why I'll say coming together at the Future of Insurance is going to be incredible, impactful. Hopefully we can see you all there, because I want to kind of do like a 60-second, instead of me wrapping up, I want to ping pong each of you. And if we could keep it to 60 seconds, or 30 seconds, it'll cut hard on the hour. What AI use case do you all expect to disrupt the insurance industry? And I'll maybe start with you, Ellie, Frederick, and then Firas.
Oh, good question.
30 seconds, go.
I know. Oh, the pressure. It's going to be, I mean, generative AI is going to revolutionize anything that involves humans communicating with other humans. I think that we're going to be able to automate a lot of that. We're going to be able to automate a lot of it and reduce the cost there.
I love it. Frederick?
I'd say claims reporting and filing in a heartbeat with your cell phone, and perhaps you're pushing your models for underwriting from doing with manual labor and pen and paper to more of a, this is the machine giving you the recommendation, yes or no.
I like that. Firas?
The main, I think, let's say AI use case, which is going to disrupt the insurance industry and is going to create, let's say, big competitiveness between sectors, is the automation. How we can automate, for example, especially the claims. Who is going to be fast payment? Is the company from Frederick? Is it the company from, for example, Lisa or another company, insurance company? So this is also key. How we can, for example, ensure automation of different processes, including for sure the claims. In addition to that, there is also the technology of how we can integrate AI with IoT with blockchain in order to, for example, optimize different, for example, processes.
And I think it's about to cut us off. So I just wanted to say thank you to you all. Amazing, insightful discussion. Can't wait to hopefully be with you in person in Amsterdam and to continue the dialogue. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to hopefully seeing you soon.